The rotor blades of the CH-47 Chinook roar like a dragon, slicing through the clouds blanketing the dense jungles of Vietnam. It's 1972, a sun-drenched day in Quang Tri province, heavy with tension. Inside the aircraft, soldiers of the 1st Cavalry Division, airmobile, brace for a crucial assault. The drone of the engines is a constant, yet a silence hangs over the men as the adrenaline spikes, each one preparing to drop into enemy territory. "We're hot! 1 minute to the LZ," the pilot yells, as the unit waits for the signal. For them, time seems to stretch into an eternity. They know that on the ground below, grunts are on the move, hearts pounding in their chests. As the helicopter hovers over the canopy, the operators peer anxiously out the windows. Below, Viet Cong bunkers emerge like shadows along the tree line, perfectly camouflaged by nature. The jungle has been a powerful ally to the enemy, aiding the guerrilla tactics that have dominated the region. But now, with the arrival of the Chinook, things are about to change. This isn't just a helicopter, it's a combat multiplier. Capable of hauling 24,000 pounds, the Chinook can ferry supplies, troops, and even light vehicles. "Prepare to disembark." The command cracks like a thunderclap. Turning toward the opening side door, the first soldier jumps. A deafening roar echoes through the forest as the soldiers hit the ground, armed with M16 rifles and M60 machine guns, ready to push toward the bunkers. The CH-47's deliberate pace, when contrasted with the Viet Cong's lightning-fast tactics, presents a paradox. What might seem a disadvantage becomes a strategic asset as the US prepares to bring its full might to the battle. "Move up to the bunkers!" Shouts ring out like a call to arms as the squad advances, acutely aware of the risk they face. The Chinook makes a low pass. From their seats, the door gunners watch as their incendiary grenades light up the sky, erupting as they hit the ground. The vegetation around the bunkers explodes in a flash of fire and smoke. What these soldiers are witnessing is overwhelming. They stand between the world of the living and the echoes of the past, a direct symbol of technology unleashed on the battlefield. But the question remains, how could the slow, majestic hover of this machine become the key to success? The Viet Cong, now aware of the Chinook's approach, feel the shift in the wind. Accustomed to ambushes and swift retreats, they must quickly assess how to stay hidden under the gaze of this powerful machine. They dart between bunkers, ready to surprise the American soldiers, but air power is unforgiving. The roar of the engines becomes a symbol of air dominance. Where there was once uncertainty, there is now the thunderous realization of technology's importance. But in this battle, American preparedness will clash with the cunning of warriors who, even at a disadvantage, have their own weapons waiting in the shadows. The first shots ring out, shattering the fragile calm before the storm. Bullets ricochet off the bunker walls, and explosions reverberate in each soldier's mind, creating a bloody symphony of war. The Chinook's true power begins to reveal itself, not just in its size or armament, but in the number of lives and supplies it can bring in and take out. But in this dance of death, both man and machine must figure out how to survive the unexpected. And so the battle intensifies. What was initially seen as a cumbersome approach, the slowness of a machine begins to transform into a fundamental warfighting strategy. The future of military technology will be redefined here. What lessons in survival and adaptation will be learned for future conflicts? It is in this setting, where the roaring dragon becomes a symbol of strength and endurance, that the narrative of the Vietnam War takes an unexpected turn. How could slowness be a deadly weapon? The story is just beginning to unfold. Want to find out how this machine transformed warfare? Subscribe for an in-depth analysis. The CH-47 Chinook, more than just a piece of engineering, quickly established itself as a transformative force in the dynamics of the Vietnam War. To understand this aircraft's true impact, one must look closely at its specifications and the circumstances that led to its creation. In the heat of battle, its capabilities stand out, proving it to be a true tactical game-changer. The Chinook is a tandem-rotor heavy-lift helicopter designed to maximize stability and power. With an impressive payload capacity of 24,000 pounds, it's the go-to workhorse for moving troops, vehicles, and supplies, bringing the power of air support and logistics wherever it's needed most. This machine isn't just robust, it's also extremely versatile. Beyond transport, it can be equipped with weapon mounting points, allowing it to transform into an attack platform if necessary. Its maximum operational speed is 170 knots, and its effective range is about 1,000 nautical miles, numbers that speak to swift and agile mobility in a complex theater of operations like Vietnam. The Chinook's service ceiling is 20,000 feet, giving it the ability to operate above most threats posed by Vietnam's mountainous terrain, such as enemy small arms fire and anti-aircraft artillery. It is a machine built for modern warfare, adapting to the demands of battle and challenging conventional concepts of air mobility. However, the CH-47 didn't appear out of thin air. Its conception is a story of responding to emerging needs. In the years leading up to the war, the US struggled to move large quantities of troops and supplies through Vietnam's difficult geographical conditions. The concept of a heavy-lift transport helicopter, capable of rapidly deploying troops and saving them long, dangerous treks by road, proved essential. And so, the Chinook was born, developed by Boeing Vertol, destined to become an icon of military ingenuity. At the time the Chinook entered service, the US Armed Forces were learning the hard way that the war in Vietnam was unconventional. Guerrilla tactics prevailed, and a new kind of combat was emerging. Expectations for the Chinook were high, with many betting its introduction could single-handedly turn the tide in favor of the US. But how would the machine perform in actual combat? What would its operators face in the field to test its capabilities, and how far could it take American troops? While various forces prepared to deploy the Chinook in combat, a spirit of skepticism lingered. Would the Army know how to effectively utilize such a complex machine in dynamic situations when the enemy moved so quickly through the jungle? Tensions mounted as pilots and crew, who had no prior combat experience with this model, readied themselves for a new level of challenge. Was victory guaranteed, or was there a steep learning curve ahead? As the Chinook began to fly missions, its capabilities quickly caught the attention of commanders. During one operation in January 1970, the Army managed to rescue a surrounded unit in the Mekong Delta, extracting over 50 soldiers in a single lift. And with every ton of equipment ferried to the front lines, the lives of countless soldiers were impacted. But this was only the first glimpse of a potential just beginning to unfold. The question remains, how well would this technology adapt to the challenges that lay ahead? In the harshest battlefields, how effective would the Chinook be under pressure? And as it faced the unpredictable tactics of the Viet Cong, what answers would technology provide? What was poised to be a transformation in modern combat could also become a test of endurance for both the machine and the men on board. How does technology adapt to challenges in combat? Stay tuned for more fascinating revelations about the power of the Chinook in action. On a sweltering day in April 1971, tension hung thick in the air as the CH-47 Chinook prepared for its baptism by fire in Operation Lam Son 719, a daring mission into Laos designed to strike North Vietnam's supply lines. The objective was clear: dismantle the Ho Chi Minh Trail that sustained the enemy. The Chinook, with its unmistakable roar, represented more than just a tool. It was a promise of mobility and lethal support in a theater of war where every second counted. The pilots, now more experienced, were aware of the high expectations placed on them. The helicopter, known for its robust transport capacity and versatility, would be vital to moving troops and supplies through dense jungles and treacherous terrain. "Remember, we're here to make a difference. Use this bird to your advantage," one of the pilots said, making a final check before descent. The challenge was about to begin. The unknown awaited them. After a brief recon flight, the crew spotted the first bunkers. The thud of artillery joined the deafening sound of the engines, creating a cacophony of war. The Chinook descended, its rotors chopping the air and kicking up a cloud of dust that obscured the view ahead. With hearts in their throats, the soldiers jumped, and the environment immediately transformed into a chaotic field of fire and smoke. These men knew their lives depended on this helicopter's precision. The initial impact of the operation was explosive, with the ensuing moments described in military reports as decisive. The helicopter carried not just men, but also a massive payload of weapons and supplies, rifles, ammunition, and medical equipment. The logistical power of the Chinook quickly became apparent. However, the troops wondered if the air support would remain constant or if the resilience of a determined enemy would throw a wrench in the works. During the operation, the Chinook was tasked with making multiple trips, landing in hot LZs under enemy fire. "Nothing a full tank and a pilot with guts can't handle," joked one of the crew members. But as the hours wore on, the gravity of the mission became increasingly clear. The harsh reality of asymmetrical warfare demanded that the helicopter not only survive, but overcome extraordinary challenges. As the operation unfolded, the enemy began to adapt. The Viet Cong, wary of the big machine attacking them from the sky, were ready to put up a fight. Using swift and unpredictable tactics, they employed concealment and ambushes, making it difficult for the Chinook to land and take off in critical areas. "We need more cover fire," an operator yelled into the radio as soldiers scrambled from one bunker to press the attack. The Chinook's ability to transport over 50 soldiers and vital supplies was being pushed to its limits. The CH-47's strength and resilience were undeniable, but the tension mounted as airstrikes had to be coordinated with pinpoint accuracy. The flight crew was now facing a true test of skill. One of the pilots, seizing a moment's break, said, "Stay cool. We're going to take this fight straight to them. The sky is ours." The aerial maneuvers became sharper, and the pilot's skill was on full display in their control and agility. The roar of the Chinook became a symbol of hope, a beacon for the troops on the ground. Even now, facing a fierce reaction from the guerrillas, the machine was proving as effective as its designers had intended. By the end of the day, the Chinook had transported over 75 tons of military aid to the front lines, changing the course of the action in real time. How successful was the operation, really? What else would the troops learn about this powerful machine as they continued to face Viet Cong tactics that seemed to anticipate their every move? The impact of the Chinook in combat was still echoing, as a new appreciation for its qualities emerged from the dust and fire of the jungle. Like a debut on the grand stage, air power's true impact had much more to say about the innovations to come. How could a machine's real value be measured in such moments? What was now clearer than ever was that a new standard was being set. The battle for control of the skies and the ground was just beginning. The operation pushed forward amid intense fighting, and the deafening sound of the CH-47 Chinook continued to echo through the jungle. The confidence of the American troops grew as the day wore on, but the fight was far from easy. The North Vietnamese were proving to be a cunning and ferocious adversary. This first major operation in a new phase of combat brought a level of uncertainty that challenged the skills of the American forces. The Chinook, described as a dragon of the skies, had become a symbol of hope but also a target. In the middle of a field blanketed in dense vegetation, a brutal assault on several supply posts was planned. The command had to ensure that every payload carried by the Chinook reached its destination. With ground forces meeting fierce resistance, their reliance on the helicopter's capabilities would be tested even further. "We're ready to move as soon as we touch down." The radio crackled, each second feeling like an eternity as the Chinook approached. As the soldiers began to disembark near the shadow-drenched bunkers, the bird made a rapid descent, its spinning blades blasting dust particles everywhere. The air was thick with palpable tension, but there was a growing determination on the front lines. "Let's move! Boots on the ground!" a sergeant yelled as everyone prepared for the assault. The troops trusted the Chinook's power, hoping this delivery of supplies and reinforcements would turn the tide of battle. However, an ambush was being prepared. The Viet Cong, well-informed and grouped together, waited patiently. A sharp crack cut through the air. The first shot was fired. Bullets ricocheted off the bunkers, and the surrounding jungle seemed to come alive. The Chinook pulled away quickly, evading the furious barrage of fire that had caught everyone by surprise. A sense of vulnerability began to set in. What was supposed to be a tactical advantage was quickly turning into a high-stakes gamble. For every success the Chinook had on its transport missions, there was a continuous learning process. When one unit got pinned down in a bunker and called for extraction, the team once again relied on air power. Piloting with precision, the Chinook appeared at a critical moment, but low visibility and enemy fire forced the crew into daring maneuvers. One of the soldiers on the ground, when he finally spotted the aircraft, said, "There, our ride is here." The adrenaline sent expectations soaring. During the impending rescue, a mix of courage and fear dominated the men's faces. The helicopter, now part of the growing combat legend, prepared to land, but the air was suffocating with the chaos of the firefight. "Get the wounded first. Let's make this quick or they'll nail us." The urgency was clear in the crew chief's voice. With lives on the line, every second was precious. With a monumental roar, the Chinook touched down behind the line of fire, and the soldiers scrambled aboard. The rescue team operated with practiced efficiency, moving quickly and loading the wounded just as they had trained. As the rotors lifted off again, expressions of relief were evident. The Chinook, with another successful mission under its belt, felt the weight of its accomplishment in its very frame. This was a test of loyalty, endurance, and resilience. After the operation, statistics showed that the Chinook had transported an impressive 2,000 soldiers throughout the day, delivering 150 tons of equipment to combat zones. However, the numbers behind the operation didn't tell the full story. For many soldiers, the trust they placed in the machine was central to their fight for survival. They needed it on every mission as they faced the hardships of the terrain and clashes with a determined adversary. Which lessons learned from this day would echo in future missions? The story of the fight for every life carried by the Chinook was becoming a cornerstone of its journey. The challenges were many, but the narrative of overcoming them was shaping the legacy of this monumental machine. What would the next day in combat bring? What else could war teach about devotion to machine and mission? Hold on tight, because the Chinook's legion of stories is far from over. How will its challenges shape the battlefield in the days to come? The future still holds secrets, and the power of this aircraft continues to surprise. The summer of 1972 began with a palpable sense of anxiety among American troops in Vietnam. The Chinook, already known for its exploits, was now called upon for a new level of mission, Operation Linebacker. The objective, to sever North Vietnam's supply lines and bomb the strategic targets that sustained the enemy's war machine. With the conflict intensifying and tactics changing rapidly, the Chinook became not just a transport, but an essential part of an arsenal that needed to prove its strength in an increasingly hostile environment. At the heart of the action was one of the most critical operations of the war. "We're facing a theater of operations where every move counts," a commander warned as the briefing began. As the crews prepared for takeoff, their faces showed a mix of determination and uncertainty, a combination of pressure and expectation built as final checks were made. The Chinook was ready to execute rapid flights, transporting soldiers, supplies, and weaponry that would make a difference. With its massive lift capacity and surprising agility as its engines roared to full power, it became a key ally in combating the enemy's evolving tactics. "We're going to hit the front line hard. Our support today is essential to the operation," a pilot whispered to his co-pilot, focused and determined. Approaching the first drop zone, the entire crew felt their hearts race. The spinning blades generated a nearly deafening sound, but inside that machine there was an almost electric anticipation. As soon as the soldiers disembarked onto hostile ground, they were ready to deal with the reality of war and all that it entailed. "Remember your training. We're going to make this mission a success," a sergeant shouted, oblivious to the noise surrounding his team. The first shots were fired in a brief flash, and the men advanced with precision. But a new level of resistance from the Viet Cong was noticeably present. The element of surprise from earlier missions was fading, and enemy tactics had begun to adapt. The guerrillas, emboldened and determined, understood the Chinook's every move above them, and ambushes and rocket attacks were becoming common. Tension mounted as time passed. The Chinook had to perform evasive maneuvers in response to artillery. The results were an emotional roller coaster. Sometimes, the aircraft experienced the tranquility of the open sky. Other times, it was dragged into the grim reality of a fierce battle. "We're in a critical pattern. Hold your positions," the pilot ordered, as the atmosphere grew tense again, the engine's roar now alternating with the crack of gunfire. After a few round trips, the Chinook managed to keep the operation flowing. But the challenges didn't stop there. On one of these missions, a particularly fierce enemy attack damaged the helicopter's fuselage during its return flight. One of the pilots, racing against time while trying to stabilize the aircraft, commented, "We have to keep this bird flying until we get back. It's a matter of guts and tenacity." The Chinook's resilience proved unbeatable. The heavy lift not only continued, but it also boosted the morale of the troops on the ground. The teams hit several targets and managed to dismantle command centers, with each mission saving more lives. Reports showed impressive numbers, over 100 tons of supplies transported in a single day, with multiple missions carried out under intense fire. The images from the battle became iconic, the Chinook flying over the combat zone, a protective shadow for the men on the ground. This image echoed in the memories not only of those who fought, but of an entire war that was transforming daily. As the counteroffensives intensified, the helicopter held steady in the air, the struggle of the war etched into its very frame. As the efforts continued with wins and losses, the pilots and soldiers began to feel the full fury of the battlefield, but also the strength and protection of the Chinook. It was clearer than ever that, without this monumental machine, the outcome of the war could have been entirely different. The battle for control would continue. How would the Chinook's future challenges unfold, caught in a symphony of combat? The pages of history were being written with each successful mission, and with each new day, the aircraft's legend grew. What would the next chapter bring for the machine that was shaping modern warfare? The fight was only just beginning to intensify. As the Vietnam War intensified in its final phase, the saga of the Chinook became increasingly complex, but also revealing. While American pilots were aware of its strategic importance, on the other side, North Vietnamese commanders were adapting to this new reality on the battlefield. An intelligence document captured in the spring of 1973 revealed the North Vietnamese command's concern over the Chinook's ability to operate quickly and effectively. The Viet Cong, who initially relied on ambushes and swift attacks, now had to change tactics. They are perfecting their use of this machine, and we cannot allow them to continue to own the sky. We must stop them from transporting troops and supplies, a commander stated, emphasizing the need for direct confrontation and adaptation. Accounts from Vietnamese veterans confirmed this shift. Many commented on their evolving perception of the Chinook. "At first, we didn't fear it. We thought it was just another helicopter, but then we realized what it truly represented. It was a giant that carried not only men, but the enemy's morale." This reflection revealed a growing dread as North Vietnamese troops began using man-portable air defense systems, specifically the SA-7. The battle became not just physical, but psychological. It was a cat-and-mouse game in the sky. While American pilots sought safer routes, the Vietnamese defenders adapted as well. With missions becoming more frequent, the Chinook became a prime target. The tension rose when a pilot, preparing for a mission, remarked, "Things are different now. We need to stay one step ahead. What's been our greatest asset now has to be our greatest concern." The tactical shifts spurred a cycle of innovation and adaptation that quickly became a constant race between both sides. On the battlefield, the numbers were a direct reflection of the Chinook's growing effectiveness, but also of North Vietnam's tactical diversity. On one mission, a helicopter transported 150 tons of supplies in a single day, but reports indicated it faced 4 separate attacks. Although the Chinook's strength and resilience were defining characteristics for its pilots, enemy artillery was also becoming more lethal. "They know our moves now. We have to be more careful," a co-pilot said quietly, looking over the charts of recent operations. During one of the riskiest rescues, a Chinook was hit by heavy fire, resulting in a dramatic dance of evasive maneuvers. The pilot yelled, "We're going down. Use the terrain to our advantage." The rocks and jungle became allies as he skillfully maneuvered, preventing a combat tragedy. What could have been a disaster turned into a demonstration of resilience and agility. However, it was a stark reminder that the game was becoming increasingly dangerous. Accounts from soldiers on the ground recalled the comforting strength the Chinook provided in critical situations, but there was also an undercurrent of fear among the crews. How long can they dodge this deadly fire? The machine may be a marvel, but it can't be invincible, they often reflected while looking to the sky. The concerns became more visible. The Chinook was big, yes, but it also made its pilots visible targets for an enemy determined to cut this vital supply line. The story of the Chinook was transforming, not only from the American perspective, but also in the enemy's understanding. Its impact shifted views on both sides, from confidence in technical superiority to the recognition that an extraordinary machine could become a liability. With over 2,000 missions and a remarkable transport rate, each day served to show that while technology advanced, war remained unpredictable. The questions swirled. Would technology still prevail when men faced their limitations? How would Vietnamese tactics evolve in response to the Chinook's protective power? The tensions grew, returning to the tactical drawing board, where the fight was far from over. A new chapter of the war was forming, and with it the future awaited with secrets and challenges that would shape the next phase of the conflict. What would the next flights reveal about this monumental machine? What lessons would be drawn from the cacophony of combat, as tales of bravery echoed on both sides? The narrative was far from over, and the battle for control continued to unfold. Each rescue and each attack underscored the truth. Amid the fury of the fight, what remained was a growing respect for the Chinook's ability to shape the battlefield. The fighting in the Vietnam War was intensifying, and the Chinook had become an unbeatable symbol of resilience and adaptability. As the conflict neared its final moments, reflecting on the legacy of this monumental aircraft became inevitable. The Chinook's impact extended far beyond the battlefield. It shaped how conflicts were managed and how forces were designed for the future. With over 10,000 missions flown and an impressive transport rate exceeding 1.5 million tons of supplies, the machine had become an essential part of the American forces' infrastructure in Vietnam. Without the Chinook, we would have lost a lot more than just supplies. We would have lost men, said a veteran who had piloted the aircraft on some of its most critical missions. This statement is a testament to the integration of technology with human courage, an example of how innovation can elevate military struggle to new heights. However, even the Chinook was not immune to the consequences of war. As debriefings became more frequent, a growing concern about the aircraft's vulnerability emerged. Reports of successful enemy attacks showed that while the machine was tough, even the Chinook often faced dangers that challenged its frame. One commander reflected, "The machine may be a marvel, but war reveals our weaknesses. Overcoming technical superiority is the new battle we must face." As the withdrawal of American troops approached, what remained clear was the Chinook's lasting impact on the evolution of modern warfare. The aircraft's versatility not only helped change the course of battle, but influenced how future conflicts would be conducted. The ability to transport large quantities of troops and supplies over any terrain, combined with the Chinook's resilient engineering, set a new standard for military operations. The Chinook's legacy also needed to be viewed in a broader light. The war in Vietnam was not just a battle of machines, but a battle of minds. The lessons learned and the strategies developed were shared and studied in military academies around the world. The pilots and engineers of the Chinook became symbols of innovation and adaptability, shaping the future of military aviation. Although the war had left deep scars, the technological response to those challenges became a hallmark of military progress. Looking to the future, the implications of what the Chinook represented echoed in subsequent wars. In the conflicts in the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan and beyond, the idea of a helicopter as a fundamental vehicle in both support and combat became an ingrained concept. The lessons of using heavy-lift rotary-wing aircraft became standard in modern military doctrines, elevating air power's effectiveness in urban settings and difficult terrain. In the post-war years, veterans began to recount their experiences with a new understanding. What was once just a tool on the battlefield now became a symbol of brotherhood and shared suffering. "The Chinook became a part of us," one pilot reflected. "It wasn't just a helicopter, it was a partner in the fight for survival." This sentiment encapsulated the emotional connection between soldiers and technology. The machine, with its flaws and triumphs, became a testament to the human spirit that refused to be defeated. As new technologies continued to emerge, the Chinook's presence could not be overlooked. It is respected not only for its strength, but also for the way it bore the weight of war and the hopes of those who flew in it. The battle has always been a dance between innovation and adaptation, and the Chinook stands as a masterpiece that wrestles with this duality. As we reflect on the legacy of the Chinook and its influence on future battlefields, we are reminded that in every flight there is a logbook of stories, lessons, and memories. The tales of courage and sacrifice would grow on its wings, and the lessons of combat, whether heroic or tragic, will be forever imprinted on military history. The journey of an iconic helicopter goes far beyond its design. It is a narrative of overcoming adversity and a tribute to human resilience. Thus the Chinook, now dancing among the clouds of memory and legacy, continues to inspire new generations of pilots, soldiers, and leaders. Amid the echo of its rotor blades, an indelible truth remains. The fighting spirit of man to overcome even the most difficult challenges can never be underestimated. And may the legend of the Chinook endure as a beacon in this eternal fight for freedom and survival.